I think I understood the introduction of me, so I'm not going to say anything more about that. So I am working at the Centrum for Responsible Consumption and Production. So this is what I do, and so I'm looking more kind of into business practices in my research. So that's where I'm coming from and my comments and review. But also a reminder, I know that the very progressive way that the world is going and all the countries are going and the positive things that are happening are wonderful. But also it has a little bit of a cost. So our footprint on the ecosystem is quite large, and I think we all notice it, and I think it's so beautiful here. And when I flew in, it reminded me of Sweden. I think also that you have this passion for nature, as Swedes do. So we love to go mountain hiking or go out in nature and enjoy it. And also it saddens us when we see destruction to it. But also this development, as I said, it has its cost, and the latest developments that was shown for the Sustainability Development Goals only shows figures up to 2010. That's what I found. So, but you can see here that the progression also means that we use a lot more also from nature. And it has some social cost, of course, also. A person in Sweden that investigates this on the scale of the planet Earth, Rockström and colleagues, they have also developed this to show how the supportive systems of the Earth itself, and hence us and other beings, be it plants or animals, are very critical to look at. And there are some that are challenged, which also can, of course, create lots of business opportunity. But I think it's also important to see that, yes, we are making great progress, but we have challenges. And I think also that what Ola said. And that could be a direction for us as businesses and people. And not to forget the people in here. We are not only businesses. Businesses are also comprised of people, and we also want part of this prosperity and be part of the ecosystem. So social system is as important to sustain and to support, to get this planetary system to also be healthy. And I think Sasha Besney showed it very clearly that there are some dysfunctions that we people do that really is not supportive if we want to support the planet and ourselves in the long term. So that's just sort of a reminder and a scope of this. I was asked also to describe how about Swedish industry and the developments that has been done in the world. I'm losing this, I think. In the world, Sweden is considered by many as very progressive when it comes to working with sustainability issues. And to some extent that is true, but also we have challenges that we are working with and that we need to solve. And the picture here shows basically a very rough picture of what we have been working with over time. And it started in the 60s when we had lots of sewage going out to our beautiful lakes. It was smelly and impossible to swim in. And it came from industry and of households. So it started a huge cleanup program, and we also had laws regarding the pollution to lakes, to the ground, and to the air. And that also started an industry to find these technological solutions to end-of-pipe solutions. And that industry is still very profitable globally, because of course we always have emissions to nature. And they developed and became very profitable and also global, and has a lot of work to do. That sort of gave a spur to industrial development into clean technologies that started already in the 60s and that we also now have today. And then we had the 70s and the oil crisis and energy crisis, and the energy prices went up a lot. So energy savings of all kinds started, and input management in factories, and things that I heard in the former panel talking about. A lot of energy efficiency, and we also have like chemical, so that closed loops in factories that reduces also the cost for the firms. So it's not only a cost of investment, it actually pays back fairly quickly. So input management and efficiency issues was very high on the agenda, and that has continued throughout. And with new goals and new agendas set, that also is progressing today. And we also heard waste. Coca-Cola was asked about the bottles and what to do with them. Yes, recycling systems of bottles started, and that was glass bottles then, and metal cans were thrown in nature. So people got upset, you are doing things here, so we had a program for recycling starting, and that was a cooperation between the government and industry to set up a system for this. But it became a system into the retail stores, where you brought it back. You paid a certain amount for the bottle, and when you returned it, you got that money back. So that was the first system, and you could say that was like a private market system that started by the bottling companies in Sweden, but with also, of course, support of people that participated and did this. And then later on, we started also with globalization. We stopped a lot of production in Sweden. We moved it, and companies completely outsourced the part of the production. So it ended up being sometimes in countries with high vulnerabilities regarding working conditions, children's working, etc. And a lot of focus became on corporate social responsibility, CSR, in the late 80s and 90s. So companies then were organizing themselves to really capture, okay, what is our responsibility? How far should we go? Should we go down the whole supply chain and try to fix this? Because this is either a risk to us, because investors are pointing to us, or customers are angry with us, and we don't sell products. So we are in scandals in the newspapers, etc., and we don't want to be there. So what do we do? So lots of systems, management systems were in place to try to control the supply chain. And that is also still ongoing. Things are happening more or less, I would say on a weekly basis you read something, a scandal that is going on. And also, of course, there are global standards developing, there are OECD guidelines, there are all sorts of things that can support companies also to see how can we work with this. And especially if you're a small, medium-sized company, it can be very difficult to control where does it come from and what happens when you buy goods and sell on your domestic market. But also now a realization that we are part of the planetary system and human system, so we need to integrate this into our core business. So I hope the next speaker after lunch from Ericsson would also describe how they are working on this scale with examples for this. So I would say like the early gains that were also very profitable for industry, and I heard this panel talk about this is actually good business for us because it reduces cost. We are cost focused. Was these end-of-pipe solutions. We developed a new industry from it, and suppliers that came from it too. And efficiency investments, that was a huge success. And even if it were big investments, the payback time was 12 to 36 months, very short. You actually gain from it because of the massive cost reduction. So what we call that is like, you know, the easy pick investments that you can do. And that is chemical flows in factory, so having control of leakage, and energy use, usually fairly easy to work with measures like that to save. And not also to forget, I think, is the public sector. The public sector was, when I started this in the 60s and 70s, very big in Sweden. I think maybe equivalent to what it's here in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So they were also quite a big buyer, and still, it's still from schools to hospitals, etc., big buying force. So they put demands on environmental or social measures to be taken for those that are supplying to them. And by adjusting, you can get a competitive advantage towards other companies, because they actually have that as a rule. And public procurement in the European Union have demands on this as well. So if you want to be successful in selling to the public sector, which is quite big, working with controlling these things or investing in sustainability is good business. And also in Sweden, there was, I think, also a force. Private companies, some private companies started fairly early on sustainability in reporting. It started with environmental reporting, and then it went into sustainability reporting. And then a wise person in the government decided that all publicly owned companies should report on SDGs, basically, not SDGs to begin with, but on sustainability, and now SDGs. And that really pushed, I think, most of the private companies into reporting, and now it's mandatory for all that are publicly listed on the stock exchange in Stockholm to actually report on sustainability. And of course, if you're reporting, you need to measure and you need to know. So you need to have transparency of what you are actually doing. So I think that's a very important driver also, to actually see what is your impact of the business. And that could also be a way of identifying those, what I call low-hanging fruits investments that actually will save you money as well. And of course, nowadays, I think a lot of governmental support goes also through supporting entrepreneurship, innovation, education in the area of sustainability. And the business sector gets lots of R&D basically through cooperations between foundations for research and universities working together. And that's very important, I think, in terms of creating this sort of institutional support for working with challenges that we have regarding sustainability and opportunities. And here is a fairly recent showing that regarding investments in climate, that alternative technologies and energy efficiency is making a difference. Investing in it and putting really good minds and great engineers and lots of people that want to be entrepreneurs and do something here makes a difference. We have grown with basically 2 million people during this time, and still we have saved energy. So I think it's a good sign that, and that's 26% saving since 1990, although the population growth has been quite big. So when we ask, we have done research over time, so this shifts a little bit depending on what year we ask, but if we ask managers in companies, why do you engage in CSR or sustainability? The first and absolutely majority basic answer that comes, it's business opportunity. It's a business case for sustainability. And that's when we ask managers and CEOs. So it's not like it's a cost we have to, it's legislation, it's a business case for it. And then this reputation management. Your brand is important. And if you have a brand that is very public, you are also vulnerable if critique comes. So brand management, and an attractive supplier or attractive business partner, because businesses are not happening by itself in an isolated island. You're always working with others. That you're sourcing materials or you're selling to a company or somebody else. There's always businesses together and in partnership. So this comes up very, very high too. So it's also either being attractive or actually it makes good sense to connect with your suppliers in a tighter manner and work together to find solutions. Another one, especially in times of really high economic growth, that we have to attract talent, to attract really good people. And if I understood it right, you are losing a lot of people that leave the country, young people. Sad. And this is a way of also attracting people. Showing leadership in this area has been shown to be very successful in Sweden. My business school was not the first running to work on this. It's been a long journey that I've been part of. I'm really happy about that at my school, but now it's integrated in all our subjects at the business school level. So we have a global challenge program where we work on all the global challenges and implemented in business cases. So we're really now also giving industry what they have been asking for quite a few years. We want your students to be the best they can and know something about this, which is also great. I'm really happy that our school have now done that. And investor relations, I don't think I have to say more. Sasha was talking a lot about the investor's perspective, gaining capital. And then accountability and control, and that's what I've said, knowing actually what you're doing, what impact you have, and what you can do, and potential ways of going into new business opportunities. And also some say, we want to be a corporate citizen, we want to take responsibility, we are part of society and development, and therefore we also need to be responsible citizens as a company. So all of these are from managers. And license to operate, which I think is a really term that comes with also some legal connotations in some countries when it comes to mining. South Africa, that I studied mining in, they have a concept called license to operate that is very formal and legalized. So moving, and so the Swedish industry started, and as I told you, and had lots of management systems, environmental management systems, pollution prevention, connecting to standards regarding emissions, And the social standard, 26,000, environmental standard, 40,001. Working with efficiency, waste reduction, supply chain monitoring. And the monitoring, they themselves said that they gained a lot of insights into the businesses of the suppliers to get them to know them better, which also made business sense to them. And then product life cycle, so to know in the whole cycle. Some emissions actually happens after you sell your product. Selling a car, most of the emissions over the life of a car does lots of emissions in the production, but much more in the actual use of the car. So it's important to think beyond selling the product. And then Global Reporting Initiative is very big in Sweden, and many companies are using that. And so auditing is also an important business. And the gaining trust from the environment, from the surrounding society that you're actually taking things seriously, report on things that are clear, and also using third-party those that review your reports, and so you're not doing it yourself only. And building relationships to stakeholders of various kinds. So moving from that to now, I would say that Swedish industry is very much also here on solutions to challenge that we have. The climate challenge, we have all the other things that we're working on, the poverty and health sector, like vaccination programs. Many are doing R&Ds and things for medicines for diseases that are not really addressed. Malaria, for instance, and the foundation of Melinda and Bill Gates support a lot of that. So the private sector is really involved in here, focusing, and by joining with those forces to find solutions, that makes great business opportunities. So, and there is not only products, although innovation of products is key. So we have here researchers that have looked into, okay, what is the business potential or gain from this, and the societal. So looking at the societal plus the business potential of focusing and addressing these, we can see, well, if you only work with giving money away that you make, yeah, you can make an impact on that project. That's great, a philanthropic, but it's not related and integrated to your business. It's just money going somewhere you have no control over. So the business benefits are limited, and usually it's projects, so it maybe also societal impact might be also limited. Integration, where many of you I think are taking measurements of working with efficiency, waste management, etc., working into your production. It saves you money, it makes you maybe a more attractive business partner or supplier, or attractive to customers, and things like that. So the potential and the greatness and possible profitability for you increases, of course, and it's something that you do, so it's very connected to your business. Good thing, you know something about it, you have control over it. But the real potential lies in addressing these challenges. And product innovation, of course, is very big in this, like new medicines or new tools or new ways of producing things, cutting the, how can we, for instance, in the textiles industry, go from wet dry, where we use a lot of water and lots of chemicals that goes out uncleaned. How can we instead go into dry coloring, where we don't use water and we use less of chemicals? Things like that. Product innovation, very important. But business model innovation, equally important. Do we need everything? Own it. Can we do sharing models? Can we rent things rather than selling things? So we have control, or we get back materials that are very valuable. Electronic industry, lots of valuable metals and minerals. How can we get that back? Maybe we should rent instead of selling. So we get it back and we can make it into new products. And the last, it's a concept called base of the pyramid, but I have also think that this is unmet needs we are talking about. Are there markets out there that we actually don't address? Because we want to sell most of the products that are developed in the world are developed for the rich, top 10% or so in the world. So the big hump for the majority or for the poor, nobody's really addressing maybe the needs of them and their ability to pay. So how can we change other business models or product development that really addresses needs where they are needed? And also markets that nobody really cares about. So those are like important, I think, opportunities that we just need to open up for. So here I summarize a few trends that we are now seeing that I think also there is a lot that you are doing, but also making a leap into the future, looking at circular economy, because that will need a different type of business model and ways of doing business and ways of producing things. So there are business models, but also maybe different ways of using the waste rather than wasting it or putting it in big piles. You need to take care of it and do something really good with it. So management systems in the whole value chain, connecting with business partners that want to join that journey with you. That's looking into the future. And then also communities are growing and they want to have a share, a piece. So addressing community needs and ways of things that they are doing. Small entrepreneurs, there are small companies that are really good and way out there thinking of new things to do. And there are people who create communities that want to do things in different ways to address and be more sustainable, to support both community development but also the environment. And of course you have disruptive technologies that really forces you to do things differently. So building on your capacity, but doing things differently. I think the banking sector is a great example of how in countries where there were no really good working banks, Kenya, etc., when the cell phone technology came, that immediately became a tool for doing lots of things that were not possible. If you only had banks in the bigger cities, out in the countryside you were paid in cash. Sometimes money went directly for consumption and sometimes for alcohol and didn't go to the household, and sometimes you were robbed. But now, because there were no banks to put them in, so by cell phone you can connect to a bigger city to a bank, and so your money could instead go there, and you could use your phone for consumption when you needed it, and so forth, and doing your banking, and also be able to save. And that came first, I would say, there, and now we use that in Sweden, much later. So there are opportunities that also is created by technology. And since I have been doing the research in the fashion industry for the last 7 years on transforming the fashion industry into sustainable practices, I just give 2 short examples that are also Swedish, but connects to also that this is business models for a fast fashion company that most people in Sweden at least say that that's not sustainable. Lots of consumption, use lots of resources, etc. But H&M also think that this for the future, we need to recycle everything because the fibers in the apparel could be used to make new products. So they can sustain their fast model, but then they need the material input, which is the textile fiber. So we're doing research on how to recycle, which is, you would think, simple thing, but it's extremely complex. But we are getting there on how to do it and how to separate different types of fibers. So they have done this, and they are wanting to do it on scale, the global scale. And the partners, SOEX Group, is a German textile recycler, and they're also working with a company in Hong Kong, and they're working with our this research program on sustainable fashion that I'm part of. So this is the circularity. And then, of course, even more future for this sector is 3D printing, and this is clothes made from designers, from printers. But they are working on really finding other materials to make it more everyday clothes, and that will revolutionize and be very disruptive, I think, for how you produce clothes. So we have had development has been really starting with the textile industry and sewing factories in many countries, and then moving into other industries from that in the economic development. But this would be like you have a printer in your home and you buy just the material input to the printer, and you buy the design directly, and then you print it. So, like fax machine development, basically same. So maybe, yeah, it would be first in stores and then homes, etc. And printing. So that's basically what I have to say before our eminent panel comes in. So thank you and work on.